get started. I'm very excited to introduce Michael Wolf, the CEO and founder of Activate Consulting, based out of New York City. As I was telling you before we started, a big fan of the work that you do and particularly the trends report you put out every year. So we're so excited to have you joining us. Thank you so much. And the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. And thank you, Ed, for inviting me here today. Very exciting conference. So I'm going to share my screen, and because I brought along some slides and analysis, because at the end of the day, that's what at Activate Consulting, that's what we're all about, which is really driving change. But it's at the end of the day, it's about the consumer and about the user research. So what's the most important thing we could start off with? And that is growth dollars. So 2020, the overall technology and media revenue globally was $1.9 trillion. We forecast that over the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to add almost $375 billion in revenue to get to 2.3 trillion globally. And this is entirely the consumer side. This is internet and media, not including enterprise. So it gives you a sense of how much opportunity there's going to be in the future and the challenges that everybody in the tech business and the internet and the media business are going to face in terms of growing. And this begins with the user. In fact, as a firm, we say everything we do begins with the user, and it comes down to how are users spending their time, how are they spending their attention, how are they going to spend their money. So this is our attention clock, and this is based on consumer research. It's entirely US based. In fact, I'll tell you when there are charts that are US versus international. What this basically shows is the average American is using tech and media roughly 30 hours a day if we account for multitasking. And roughly 12 and a half hours of that day is spent on technology and media. So you can see video occupies the biggest piece of it, audio, gaming, messaging, and social media, and the other includes just standard web browsing and other activities. So we've been tracking this for a number of years. And what you can see is that after shelter in place, the number has really jumped. So we went for a number of years where it increased slightly, and the entire line has now shifted up in terms of how Americans use technology and media. It is now going to continue to grow. It is on a new growth curve. And when you think about this in terms of time, we look at this across each of the major businesses, and nowhere is this more important than in social. And so this is the minutes per month that the average American user is on each of these platforms. And you can see that Facebook and Messenger around 15 and a half hours a month. Facebook alone, 955. You can see that that suddenly out of nowhere comes TikTok at 9 hours and 14 minutes a month, and that's greater than Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, and LinkedIn combined. So people's time spent is really shifting, and in fact, we look at TikTok versus Instagram. We now see TikTok at 21 minutes a day and Instagram at 11 minutes a day. On the left, you see Charlie D'Amelio and Zach King on Instagram, who's a popular magician. So then let's look at time in terms of what we call super users. So if we look at the breakout among all users, we view there are 23% who what we call are super users, and they account for, remember I showed you those hours a day before, those super users account for 14.6 hours a day of technology and media usage, and all other users account for slightly over 10 hours a day. And this activity is replicated across all of the major activities in terms of whether or not the behavior is video spend, gaming spend, music and podcasting. So 23% of the users account for almost half of all video spend, 2/3 of gaming spend, and 75% of all music and podcasting. And this is not time, this is actual dollars spent. And the same trend continues across e-commerce, where 23% of all users account for almost 60% of e-commerce spend. And in virtual reality time spend, it's 23% account for almost 3/4. So what you can see is we're at a point where it isn't just about all internet and media users. We're getting to a point where the most important users are these super users, and they're the ones that every technology, internet media company is going to pursue. So let's talk about some of these behaviors. When you look at virtual reality and augmented reality, these are likely to become even more important in the lives of users. And there's a couple reasons why. First of all, if we look at, and once again, these are US numbers, if we look at all the headsets that have been sold, so 56% of the headsets that are in people's hands today. So in other words, if I look at every single headset, every single headset that's been sold, 56% of them were purchased during the shelter-in-place period. 22% were purchased for the first time, and 34% is a repeat purchase. And one of the reasons why this is happening is in very little time, we've gone from tethered VR headsets to untethered headsets. And this line is continuing. So what you're seeing is an entire refresh of all headsets, and in a way that ultimately mimics the way that people are going to be using them. So what are people using virtual reality for? 96% of the people who buy a VR headset are gamers, but 60% of them now are using VR activities beyond gaming. And you'll see in a little bit about how that gaming is jumping over into other activities, and we can see this begins with VR. So AR is different. So today, we know a lot of these applications in AR, and they're applications that are really accessed through a mobile phone. So we can see IKEA, you can try out the sofa or the chair in your home. You can see in other instances, so this is an app that allows you, and this is in the UK, that allows you to shop for sneakers and be able to go through and see them in a real space. But the applications that are really going to make a difference in VR and AR is going to come down in terms of enterprise. And it's about using these applications in a way that helps people do their jobs and changes their workflow, whether it's in repairing aircraft engines, it's in surgery, it's in online education. This is the place where we're going to see the consumerized app turn into, and device turn into, something that becomes very useful in the enterprise and workspace. What else is driving this is the headsets. So these are AR headsets. You've got the most expensive with this, the HoloLens from Microsoft, which is about a $3,500 price point. RealWear is another headset also used for enterprise, about $2,500. And you can see, looking at them, these are not consumer devices. These are ones that are going to be used very much in an enterprise situation. But if we look at what's here today and what's coming up, most people didn't realize Google Glass is still around, and Google is selling it still. It's an enterprise edition. It looks a little better than the old one, and it's about $1,100. And where we think this really takes off is when Apple launches its own augmented reality headset or glasses that will have a broader application, then we're really likely to see a lot of this take off. So this all relates, though, back, everything we're talking about, VR, time, consumer spend, this relates back to the e-commerce business. So if we look at global e-commerce sales, and these are global numbers, we end up seeing 6 or 7 companies account for the great majority of the spend in terms of e-commerce. But these companies aren't necessarily retailers themselves. In fact, the great majority of the e-commerce business globally is third-party sellers. So if we take apart the sales of all of these companies, recognizing 4 of them are largely in Asia, what you end up seeing is that 80% of global e-commerce is marketplace platforms. They're networks of third-party sellers, and direct retail, where the e-commerce company is holding inventory, is only 20% of the business. And we're going to see more and more of these platform businesses. So these are companies that are largely US companies that are today providing marketplace platforms. Of course, almost 60% of Amazon's revenue today is from third-party sellers. eBay is a two-sided marketplace, but a lot of people didn't know that companies like Kroger and Target and Walmart are operating as third-party platforms. Walmart has established its own version of Amazon Prime. One of the benefits is that you get lower price gasoline, something that Amazon can't offer. But also outside the United States, when we look at Latin America, EMEA, APJ, you see a whole set of other platforms that are emerging, and these are marketplace businesses. And we believe that this is going to trend much more towards marketplaces, which enable huge networks and ecosystems of sellers. Take a look at what's happened with grocery e-commerce. So we in 2019, we forecast, this is the line that we forecast for going forward in terms of the percentage of Americans that would be buying their groceries online. What ended up happening during shelter in place is this number just jumped. And it's an entirely new line. It blew the ceiling off of our previous forecasts. And we believe this is going to continue, that more and more of grocery is going to be headed online, and it's not going to go back. Our research with consumers shows that this is a new habit. What's fascinating is during shelter in place, it ended up giving business to new retailers, new online retailers. So our consumer research shows that over half of people purchased from a new e-commerce retailer during COVID-19, and 81% plan to continue to purchase from that new retailer. So it just shows that the impact of shelter in place is opening up a world for a whole new set of retailers. And what's fascinating is the extent to which people are even going to begin their web searches. In a lot of cases, people in the past, over 50% of web searches began with a portal like Amazon or began in Alibaba. Today, a lot more of it, they're going to new retailers online. But then we move into the confluence of e-commerce and video and entertainment, and nowhere is this more evident than live stream shopping. You see on the left, we have Taobao. This is in Asia. You can see that this is a behavior in China. This is almost $100 billion business. It's coming together in the US. So this is live stream shopping in the middle from Facebook. And then all the way on the right, you see live stream shopping on Amazon. This is a seller showing drones and at the same time other related items. So this all leads me to a place that is probably the most important that you can take away from today, and that is video gaming. And what we see is that video gaming is going to be the next technology paradigm. It's likely to reshape everything that people are doing in not only in their virtual lives, but also in their real lives. So these are global revenues in terms of video gaming. We ended last year with roughly almost 160 billion in revenue in terms of video games. This is the breakout. The great majority of it is in-game transactions, paid games, and then subscriptions is still a small piece of it. This is within a couple of years is $190 billion a year business. And the amount of time that people have spent with gaming has increased during shelter in place. And we believe a great deal of it's going to continue. So our consumer research shows that when people were at home in lockdown, or when they were continuing to stay at home, that their gaming time increased by 29%. We forecast that even after people are back to their day-to-day lives, it's going to have an increase of 14% that's going to be sustained. And that's already coming off of a very high base. Also, what's changed during COVID and it's going to go forward is what's happened is the mix. So existing gamers, 47% have increased by 47% are female. Were female in the past. Today, we're now at 66%. And at 45 plus, existing gamers were at 44, and new gamers who've entered, we're now at 56% of all gamers. We see the growth in gaming in 4 places. First of all, mobile. It's an activity that is pervasive around the world, but especially as these games become multi-platform. Social, practically every major game today has a social element. The platforms, all you have to do is look at Fortnite or any of the major games, and increasingly you can play them on any device. And then subscription and cloud gaming, where you can have essentially a subscription no different than what you do with Netflix. But once again, I come back to the most important thing is that gaming is the new technology paradigm. If we look at all of the historical activities that somebody did in the virtual world, whether it was search or shopping or music, all of these things are going to take place inside of games. And so 38% of gamers have now participated in a non-gaming activity or event inside video games. So this demonstrates that the aperture for what gamers are doing is opening much broader. And these are digital activities that are all moving inside of games. Never seen something this much of a dramatic shift in the internet, except going back to some of the major trends. You had search, you had social, video. All of this will now be inside of games. And then there's a number of physical activities that are moving into gaming metaverses. Everything from events to theme parks to fashion to virtual sex and shopping. All of this will also take place inside of games. Gambling, I want to talk about sports gambling in a moment, but gambling absolutely will be in major games. And so to give you an example of some of this, Roblox, which just went public earlier this week, Roblox is really a true metaverse platform. By the way, this shows people have created all of these. This is individual players, and they've been able to get them to dance together in synchronization. But if you look at Roblox, there's an entire economy that's being built inside of Roblox. And whether it's events or financial services or travel or news, all of this is taking place inside of Roblox. By the way, some of these we've mocked up, and they're either in Roblox today or they're going to be in Roblox in the future. But also, we've seen a lot of things that have happened inside of games. And so inside of Fortnite, we had the Travis Scott concert last year, and that's been followed by Diplo and Deadmau5 and a number of other concerts that have taken place inside of Fortnite. This is Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing has become an incredibly great place for people to as a dating app. And here it shows that there is a wedding that takes place inside of Animal Crossing. It's just people are becoming very comfortable moving inside of these gaming environments. Minecraft, campuses across the United States have been rebuilt by students so that virtual events can take place on those campuses, even when those campuses are closed. Grand Theft Auto already has a casino in it. It's just you can't gamble in it. Very soon, we expect that virtual dollars will turn into real-time gambling. And here's something interesting. We talk about fashion. This is a collaboration between Louis Vuitton and League of Legends. And you can see that the ancient weapon that she's using is actually an item that is branded from Louis Vuitton. So in every one of these cases, we see the overlap between the gaming life and real life. And this is also going to continue to explode because we're seeing this transition to cloud gaming. And in cloud gaming, this has evolved over time, starting going back to 2014 to 2017. And then in the last couple of years, every major gaming company has now moved into cloud gaming. And we don't know what's going to happen in the next year or so, but it's likely all these other companies will be moving into cloud gaming. The entire tech business is going to be influenced by gaming. And in fact, all of the major tech companies are likely to play deep roles in gaming. This shows, we've created this is the gaming stack. And this, if you look on the left-hand side, it's going everything from game publisher down to gaming as video. And you see that the companies that are the full stack players are Microsoft, Sony, and Tencent. And Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google are only now beginning to fill out the different segments of their stacks. What this is going to mean is likely a whole set of mergers. We've seen a number of these companies are still small enough that any of the tech giants can grab them, and it's going to happen. Expect that gaming, the activity is increasing, the pervasiveness of gaming throughout society and throughout digital lives, as well as the financial side of it. And then esports is really gaming in person. The crowds in esports, we're now at a point where, and this just shows what an example of an esports game, but we forecast that by 2024, we'll have roughly 800 million people will be viewing esports. And these are all centered around the most popular games. All of them are now being played in esports by teams, by recognized players in very large scale venues. And each of these companies, each of these are going to be moving next into esports. So this leads me to sports. Everybody laughs at me, but I think one of my favorite sports of the future is drone racing. And the reason is because it relates very closely to what people are doing in a game. And the other that I'm convinced is going to be a sport of the future is parkour. parkour. You can see the parkour activity inside of games. Don't try this yourself at home, but parkour is definitely going to be an activity that we're going to see playing out in real life. Sports tech is likely to reshape not just what happens on your screen, but also what happens on the field. Being able to, the software and the hardware being able to use to improve coaching, to wearables, which will not only help coaching, but also influence the gameplay, in-game analytics, and then all of the things that come out of coaching, which leads me to integrated sports betting, which will take place inside of the games. I know that gaming, sports gambling is being legalized around the world. More holography, and then connected venues. Ed asked earlier about 5G. This is one of the places it'll be playing out in venues. And then finally, talk about sports gambling, and where it becomes important is it isn't just about people being able to place bets. This is going to begin to look like financial trading markets. And as soon as it becomes legalized, we should expect that there's going to be a large number of possible wagers that are going to be securitized. We believe that institutional investors are going to pool assets, and they're going to participate in trading markets around gaming results. And we've mocked up this screen to show what a Bloomberg or a dashboard for a sports gambler looks like. You can see the play from different angles. You have commentators, you have a ticker below with different scores. You can see the spreads, the over and under. You see all of the sharps. This is an exciting new frontier, and it all comes together. It all comes together around video, interactive behavior, games, sports, and shopping. So I've really enjoyed being here. Thank you very much once again for having me, Ed, and I'm excited to see the rest of the conference.
Great, thank you so much, Michael, and really it's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you back here when your son joins the Maccabiah in fencing. So we'll get you back here again, and we'll be sure to hear your forecast at that point and see where you were right, and that's, I guess, we'll be placing bets on his success. Thank you so much, Michael, and I really appreciate you joining us. It's really fascinating to see your view on the future. In the other room, we're going to be having our panel on fintech and cyber with some of the most exciting companies from Israel, as well as international investors that focus on that area. Thanks so much for joining, and thank you again, Michael, and have a good day, the rest of the day today.
Thank you. Be safe.
You too. Thank you.